For the Kansas Farm and Ranch Radio Network, I'm Kaitlyn Wolters. In light of the recent tragedy at Butler & Sons Rodeo Company in Elk City, Oklahoma, I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Teresa Douthit, who is an equine nutrition specialist at Kansas State University, about why ionophores are toxic for horses and how to best avoid them.
Ionophores are routinely added to beef cattle rations, help prevent coccidiosis, promote growth in cattle. But a lot of people probably don't know that they're also commonly used in poultry rations, and they can do a lot of good things for other species, but horses are incredibly sensitive to very low levels of ionophores, and they're highly toxic. A small dose won't necessarily kill the horse, but there can be damages that occur that would be lifelong. They can suffer from cardiac damage that makes them intolerant to exercise. And so you've got a horse that you really can't ride and can't use anymore because he was exposed to ionophores at some point in time. There are a range of symptoms. Some horses you might not see anything other than a dead horse. In other cases you might have colic and weakness and unsteady gait, diarrhea. There's really no treatment for it. You just provide supportive care and hope they pull through and hope they don't have long-lasting consequences. But in a lot of cases, the first thing you would see would be a dead horse. So it is very much a risk, and it's something that horse owners should be aware of. Ionophores change the flow of molecules back and forth across the cellular membrane, and we don't really know why horses are so susceptible to it. Cardiac tissue in particular seems to be affected, but it's not well understood exactly the mechanism behind that.
Do you have any tips on how people can best protect their horses and watch out for these types of things?
So with ionophores in particular, if a company is strictly producing horse feed, their feed mill is going to be ionophore free. They're not even going to have ionophores on the facility. These companies that produce strictly horse feed, your risk is almost zero. There are other companies that will produce horse feed and other types of feed that may use ionophores. And so there are different designations. An ionophore-free facility is just that. Anything that comes out of that facility should not at any point have had any exposure to ionophore and should be very, very safe. The ionophore safe facilities would indicate that that company does produce products that contain ionophores, but they have to have some quality control in place to mitigate the risk of ionophore entering their horse feed. So that could be they use different equipment. They produce their ionophore containing feeds in one line, and they've got a whole nother set of mixers and pelleters that they use for their horse feed. So it may just be that they keep the two completely separate. It may be that they produce their cattle feed in the same equipment. They do maybe their cattle feed the first day, and they've added the ionophores. And then the next 2 days, maybe they're producing swine feed, and they don't have ionophore in that. And so they're running the corn through the system. They're running the grain, whatever products they're using, they're running it through the equipment. And as that product passes through the equipment, it's flushing the ionophores out of there. As it travels through the augers and through the system, it's carrying the ionophore with it. By the time they start producing the horse feed, it's been several days since they made anything with ionophores. They've run lots and lots of corn and lots of product through the system. Now we're producing horse feed. We've done our due diligence to make sure that any ionophore that might have been present has been flushed out. Of course, the safest option are those things that came from ionophore-free facilities. If it's ionophore safe and they're really concerned, they can contact the company and find out what those safety measures are. If you're comfortable with feed that was produced using equipment that was solely dedicated to horse feed, and that's what the company does, then great. If they're using a series of flushes and you're comfortable with that, there's a lot of horse feed produced that way that is safe and hasn't killed a horse. But could something go wrong? It could. It could, and there's always that risk there. Some of these companies then test the feed after it's been produced to ensure that there's no ionophores. So different companies handle it differently. despite our best efforts to prevent it, sometimes things happen. And so we have to, as horse owners, you just have to do your due diligence to reduce the risk as much as possible. And if you have the ability to buy it from a mill that produces strictly horse feed and it's completely ionophore free, that's going to be the safest option. But there are other companies that have other procedures in place to ensure the safety of their feed, and they are producing safe products. It is certainly something as horse owners that we have to think about.
That was Dr. Teresa Douthit, Equine Nutrition Specialist at Kansas State University.